There is something in the corner of the room. You do not know exactly what it is. It is wet, it smells wrong, something about the color is off. And before you have consciously processed any of that information, your face has already moved. Your upper lip has curled, your nose has wrinkled, your eyes have narrowed. Your stomach has sent a signal upward that you recognize immediately. Disgust. It happened before you decided anything, before you thought anything. Your body made the call, and your brain just watched it happen. That reaction is one of the most ancient and underestimated forces in human psychology. And what it reveals about you, about your politics, your morality, your relationships, your deepest fears, is one of the strangest and most uncomfortable truths in all of behavioral science. It starts with the obvious question: why does disgust exist at all? The evolutionary answer is straightforward. Disgust is a disease-avoidance system. It evolved to keep your ancestors away from things that could infect them: rotting food, human waste, contaminated water, decaying bodies, parasites. Every single one of the classic disgust triggers, the ones that produce that involuntary lip curl and stomach lurch, maps onto something that posed a genuine infectious threat in the ancestral environment. Paul Rozin at the University of Pennsylvania has spent decades studying disgust and calls it the guardian of the body's boundaries. It is the emotion that monitors what comes in and what touches you, and it is extraordinarily sensitive. Rozin demonstrated this with a now famous experiment. He asked participants to drink a glass of juice. Then he had them stir the juice with a brand new, sterilized cockroach, one that had never touched anything unclean. Then he offered the juice back. Almost no one would drink it. The cockroach had contaminated the juice, not physically, but psychologically. The disgust system does not operate on facts. It operates on contagion logic, the rule that once something disgusting touches something clean, the clean thing becomes disgusting too. One bad apple, in the mind's accounting, spoils the entire barrel. And this logic cannot be overridden by knowing the facts. You can tell yourself the juice is fine. Your body will not believe you. But here is where it gets interesting. Rozin also found that disgust is not fixed. It is culturally shaped. Things that produce intense disgust in one society produce none in another. Insects are revolting to most Western adults and a perfectly normal protein source in much of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Fermented shark, which smells like ammonia and tastes accordingly, is a delicacy in Iceland. Durian fruit, which has been described as smelling like rotting onions mixed with turpentine, is beloved across Southeast Asia. The disgust system sets the general parameters, avoid things that could infect you. But culture fills in the specific content, which raises an uncomfortable question. If disgust is a disease avoidance system, why does it respond to things that have nothing to do with disease? Moral violations trigger disgust. Betrayal triggers disgust. Social transgressions trigger disgust. When you hear about someone cheating on their partner, or a politician taking a bribe, or a person doing something cruel to an animal, you feel something that is emotionally and physiologically similar to what you feel when you see a contaminated wound. Your lip curls, your stomach turns. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt at New York University has spent years mapping what he calls the moral emotions, and disgust sits at the center of his work. Haidt argues that disgust migrated from the body into the moral domain sometime in human evolutionary history, that the same neural circuitry that once kept your ancestors from eating rotten meat began to respond to social and moral contamination as well. And this is where the science becomes genuinely unsettling, because Haidt and his colleagues found that disgust sensitivity, how easily and intensely a person experiences disgust, predicts political orientation more reliably than almost any other psychological variable. People who are more easily disgusted, who score higher on disgust sensitivity scales, are consistently more likely to hold conservative political views. They are more likely to oppose same-sex relationships, immigration, and social change in general. People who are less easily disgusted tend to hold more liberal views and to be more comfortable with novelty and boundary crossing. This is not a small effect. It replicates across cultures and countries, and the relationship runs in both directions, experimentally increasing disgust in a laboratory setting by having participants sit near a foul smell or recall a disgusting experience, measurably shifts their moral and political judgments in a more conservative direction. Make someone feel more disgusted, and they become temporarily more restrictive in their social attitudes. Think about what that means. A bad smell in the room can change how you feel about immigration policy, not because the smell has anything to do with immigration, but because your disgust system, once activated, floods your entire moral evaluation process with contamination logic. The world feels dirtier, boundaries feel more important, the outsider feels more threatening. Your political opinions in those moments are partly downstream of your nose. Haidt called this the moral dumbfounding effect. He would present people with scenarios involving harmless taboo violations, a family that eats their dog after it dies of natural causes, a man who has sex with a raw chicken before cooking it, siblings who have a consensual one-time encounter that they both agree to keep secret and that produces no negative consequences. In every case, people reported feeling disgusted. And when asked to explain why, they struggled. They would offer reasons. Then Haidt would show why each reason didn't hold up. The people would acknowledge this and then insist they were still morally wrong anyway. They had the conclusion before the reasoning. The disgust came first. The justification followed. This is what researchers call post hoc rationalization. You feel something with your gut, and then your mind constructs an argument to explain why you feel it. The feeling is primary. The logic is secondary. And this happens not just with obscure taboo scenarios. It happens with your everyday moral judgments, your political opinions, your assessments of people you meet. Your disgust response is shaping your worldview before you have a chance to think about it. But the story has one more layer, and it is perhaps the most personal one. Disgust is not just about what is out there. It is also turned inward. Terror management researchers have found that much of human disgust is ultimately about the animal body, about the fact that you are a biological creature that bleeds and sweats and ages and will eventually decompose. Reminders of this fact produce a specific kind of existential disgust that drives much of human behavior. The pursuit of beauty, of transcendence, of legacy, of religion. These researchers argue that much of what humans do is an elaborate attempt to feel less like a mortal animal and more like something that will last. You are disgusted by your own biology, and that disgust is one of the engines driving human civilization. So the next time you feel that involuntary lip curl, at a smell, at a person, at a political idea, at something you read online, pause for just a moment before you decide what it means. Because your disgust is ancient. It evolved to protect you from parasites on the savannah. It has no idea it is being asked to evaluate tax policy, or immigration law, or the person sitting across from you at dinner. But it is weighing in anyway. And most of the time, you never even notice.